Okay, so we're going to have a go at some of these groups down here now. Now I'm doing it on a different model here because it makes a teeny bit more sense. So I have a pair of pants, trousers, whatever you want to call them, and I've added a couple of details to them. So I've added a simple pocket and a very simple button. Now I want these to behave quite differently. So we're going to use the soft and the rigid decorated group. Now the soft decorated group will take the vertices you add to it and try and keep them in context with the mesh underneath it. So if the mesh underneath it creases, it will crease, but it will try to maintain its shape. So it's not going to expand and flop and fall to make it indistinct. Now just a note to modelers try to do these things. Both soft and rigid decorated groups are distinctly separate from the underlying cloth mesh. They're part of the same object, obviously, but they're not connected in any way. If you try and connect them, it won't work. That's just how it goes. You can't do anything about that. So I'm going to add this to the, sorry, that's the wrong button. I'm going to add the pocket to the soft decorated group, and to make it easier I've given the pocket a different material ID called pocket. So there we go. Now I'm going to add the button to the rigid decorated group. And the rigid decorated group is very similar to the soft decorated group, except it won't distort. It will keep its shape and keep its position on the mesh, but it won't bend or buckle or do anything we don't want it to. So edit group, I've given this a material as well. There we go. So when I run this simulation, that will come out and show nicely. So I'll just pause while I'm doing that. Okay, so that's gone through. As you can see, the button is where it should be and is the right kind of shape. And the pocket is roughly the same shape as it was, but it has bent and buckled, so it, stays a part of the mesh, but looks more or less like a pocket. Now I know it's a simple little model. You can do much more with that, make it look like an actual pocket, but yeah, that's the general idea. Now, okay. We've got two last groups to use. We've got the choreographed and the constrained. I'll start with the constrained. Now what constrained will do is try and keep the vertices you add to it in place in context of the mesh below. So what I'm going to do here, if I just go back to the beginning, is mark the ring around the waist so that they stay where they are. So when we go back to this point, once we've rerun the simulation, it will look a little bit different. So okay, let's do that. So edit constrained, I'm going to hide the underlying object, pop it into a mesh so I can see both sides, get my left hand camera, zoom in a bit. That will just make it a bit easier for me to select the bits I want. So just drag out your box. I'm only going to do this roughly, I'm not going to take too much time in making it absolutely perfect. Okay, although that isn't bad. Okay, go back to my normal camera. So that's left some there that weren't right. I've selected a couple there, but it's just a demonstration. I'm not trying to be perfect with this. Okay, so I'm going to rerun that simulation and we'll see what it looks like. Let's just go here, so that's what it looks like now, and once it's rerun, I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. Okay, so that's run now, and you'll see to start with we have more of a curve around here. That's because I've got quite a high distance from mesh, quite a high offset. That means that when the simulations run, that's pushed it away from the body, but because I've constrained these icons around vertices around the top, that's kept them where they should be, so I've got a bit of an edge now, which is quite nice. The shape has changed a little bit. I think this is buckled up a bit more. So yeah, that's what your constrain does. I generally use it for wastes. Occasionally I've done it on collars to try and keep those where they should be. The problem with that is the edges of the collars tend to twist a bit. You're better off with a decorated group there, I think. Right. Okay, next. The next one is probably going to be slightly trickier because I haven't got anything to move really. The choreograph group. If we add just a small amount of vertices to this, what will happen with the choreograph group is these will move, or the vertices will move independently of everything else according to where you move the model. Now it's a little bit tricky in that you have to move the whole mesh to get it to move. So if I flip to the end, I'll just zoom out so we'll see what it looks like now. Let me zoom in a little bit. So I've got the gene selected, and all I'm going to do is give that a bit of a move. If I move that a bit that way, perhaps a little bit that way. So yeah, while it's not actually useful for this too much, it's going to pull the vertices from where they started and end them there, but only the vertices we've selected. Good for cloaks, if you want to grab a corner of a cloak and move it somewhere. Great for skirts, you can move hems around. All sorts of applications really. Okay, so I'm going to pause and do that simulation, and we'll see what it looks like in a moment. Okay, so that's run through. I've done it twice. I selected a few less vertices to make it look a bit more sensible. And you can see that's just pulled that seam away, or hem rather, so that it drags it out, and it will drag obviously the model in front of it against the model. And you could do all sorts with it. As I say, I mean, I've used it to lift edges of skirts and make things go where I want them. You can swirl a cloak left and right, or flags, or whatever you like really. So I hope that's been useful. I think that the soft and the hard decorated groups are quite frankly brilliant. You can really get some good clothes out of them. The constrained and the choreographed, very helpful. Constrained, I've often used that to keep things where I want them. Because if a skirt I've made has dropped over her hips and started to fall to her legs, just put the constrained ring around her waist, and it stays where it ought to. Again, I hope that's been useful. I'll see you again in another tutorial another time. Take care, have a good weekend.